Very excited to meet our Turkish friends and just a correction, small correction. I'm not doctor. I'm not a PhD. So I'm simple Tahira. But lot of people over here also, they call me doctor. And when I tell them that I'm not a doctor, they say that for us, you are a doctor. So, first of all, good morning and Assalamu alaikum to all Turkish friends. And today, first of all, I will have a little bit, I think Trish has already introduced me to some extent, but I'll take another couple of minutes to introduce myself. I have basically around 38 years of experience in, you can say, chemical field and non-chemical field also. I'm basically a chemical engineer, and I started working in 1982 with the fertilizer complex in Pakistan. And then I basically shifted to Middle East, where bulk of my experience is there. So for the last almost 23, 24 years, I am here in the Middle East working for the chemical and non-chemical industry also. Like I explained, that my expertise, like Trish explained, my expertise for the last 24, 25 years are the performance management systems, in particular reference to the ISO standards also, as well as non-ISO standards in terms of responsible care, in terms of sustainability management systems, in terms of all that one. We specialize in development, implementation, and up to the certification level. We help companies to grow in terms of. So it's not only business, basically what we think of, but we also think of ethics in terms of the environment, health, safety, and security, what we need to do to make the industry safe. We will be, I'll now share my screen. So everyone can hear me, right? Correct? I mean, is there any problem? Or yes, shall I increase my tone or reduce my tone? I mean, just the sound.
Okay. Everything is okay. No problem.
Okay. So we will talk about the ethics and course and chemical safety and how basically from where it's coming down to the chemical industry, and how we are supposed to ensure that whatever we do in terms of chemicals or in terms of labs, in terms of research centers, in terms of chemical industry, how we are going to address the health and security, health, safety, security, and environmental responsibilities which lie on our shoulders, basically. So we will also talk about initiatives like the responsible care. We will talk about that one in detail, a little bit detailed, because we don't have that much time, because we can speak for days on this topic. It's interesting, and then the security standards and frameworks we will talk. So how responsible care basically came up. So there were a lot of accidents, I'll call it. I'll not term it under sort of incident, although these are also termed incident, but these were major catastrophic accidents which happened. One of them, the trigger for responsible care was the Bhopal one in 1984 in India. And then later on also, there were a lot of issues with the chemical industry and all that one. And the latest one, a recent one, which happened in Beirut, Lebanon, where around 3,000 tons of ammonium nitrate exploded in the warehouse. And before that as well, the engine, which was in China, though that warehouse also exploded, and a lot of casualties and a lot of issues with that one. So we will discuss about, because like for instance, when we talk about some initiative program, there is a certain commitments which are extended by each of these stakeholders. Now, beyond that one, what do we need to do in terms of chemical industry, in terms of preventing these type of incidents? So responsible care, basically, it appeared in the Dubai Declaration on International Chemicals Management, SICAM, Strategic Approach to International Chemicals Management, where they basically admitted that the chemical industry's responsible care program is quite an effective program and need to be implemented, or we need to support this program in terms of implementation. And they have basically accepted in this SICAM declaration that it's a proven initiative and program for the chemical industry in terms of environment, health, safety, and security. We will talk about all these four elements, or three elements: health and safety, environment, and security in responsible care. Okay. So what is basically the responsible care? It's, like I said, it was in 1984, after the triggering event in Bhopal, the chemical industry in Canada, they sat together and they started deliberating how we can, because the impression, you can say the reputation of the chemical industry was basically on the downward trend, and they wanted to have some sort of program in place where instead of people asking the industry or the government states to shut down the chemical industry because it's creating a lot of problems. So the industry, the people, the representative from the chemical industry in Canada, they sat together and they decided that we should do something so that we can improve our reputation, so that we don't come to the stage where we have to shut down the industry because of the regulatory requirements and all that one. Like every one of us know that whatever we are using these days, 99.99% we are using the chemicals in one way or the other. So it's very difficult to find something which doesn't have any chemical which we are using. So even when we are sitting here talking, I mean, if we look around each other, it's very difficult to find anything which is without any chemical. So papers, wood, these laptops, computers, and everything else. So the concept was that we should be telling the general public that it's essential for the maintaining the quality of life, as well as it's a sort of chemicals are needed in terms of growth, in terms of societal growth. So they came up with this responsible care initiative, and now then in 1988 it was also adopted by American Chemistry Council, and later on they came up with 2 standards which are associated with this, which we will talk later on, associated with this responsible care. Then the International Council of Chemical Associations, which has the membership of all the national chemical associations as well as the regional chemical associations like GPCA, like CEFIC, like Turkish Association, Chemical Manufacturers Association. These are all members of ICCA. So they took over the ownership of responsible care, and now it's been implemented in around 65 countries worldwide. And that was the reason, because it's been happening since 1990s. So that's why in 2006, the Dubai Declaration has responsible care mentioned within this item after basically such a long tenure of good performance in the chemical industry. Now, the interesting thing is that not only the chemical industry, but the non-chemical industry is also implementing responsible care, because it's a management system. So management system can be applied anywhere, irrespective of the nature of the business, what we do. So when we talk about chemical industry mean everything associated with chemicals, whether these are manufacturing companies, whether these are research centers, whether these are labs, whether these are all. In addition, now recently, we got certified the Saudi Central Bank, which is a very strange sort of responsible care certification, but since it's applicable to any type of industry, so we did that one. And they were highly successful. And by the way, one of the COVID-related point over here is that during the COVID was not there at that time. And in our risk assessment, we mention the spread of disease through use of these currency notes. And we talked about a lot of diseases, like in terms of which are jaundice type of thing, or all these type of things. And this is exactly what, because we propose that they should be sterilizing their currency. And that's what exactly they did when the COVID came in. They were having a plan and all that one. So it's not only chemical industry, all other industry can also apply. My experience, in our experience, we have done it for the cement industry also. We have done it for the real estate also, and all that one. So it's a very interesting and very attractive sort of initiative. Why it has become attractive? Because a lot of elements are together in this one. So the companies, the organizations, they do not have to go individually to each of the elements which are part of their business processes and implemented. So basically, when the Canadians came out, they were focusing on 3 things. One was that we should have some mechanism where we can improve and protect the environment, health, safety, and security of our members and the community. So community here doesn't mean industrial chemical community. A community means the communities around us where we operate, whether we are working in the manufacturing industry or a research center or universities, so those areas which use chemicals, the communities around them. So, and then increase product stewardship focus. Product stewardship means, so people, all the stakeholders, they need to know the risk and hazards of the chemicals which we are using. So that is basically the product stewardship. Means if I am using a chemical and I am manufacturing a chemical, it's my responsibility that risk and hazards are first properly identified and then communicated to all the stakeholders along the value chain. Means I'm not talking about something which is within my business area, like in university, in research center, or in labs, or in manufacturing industry. I have to ensure that all the value chain, which is the external chain as well, supply chain, logistics, marketing, distribution centers, warehouses, all those are part of that one, part of the product stewardship process. And similarly, they also focused on a system to manage and communicate our HSSE issues, health, safety, security, and environmental issues. Also, because since responsible care is a management system, performance management system, so it deals with the overall performance management in terms of environment, health, safety, and security. So within this performance management system, we will find a lot of wordings which talks about distribution, which talks about product stewardship, which talks about environmental protection, process safety, product stewardship. So these are normally responsible care is supported by the codes of management practices. These codes of management practices basically fulfills each of these requirements, which we find it in terms of wordings in the responsible care initiative or a program or a standard or a performance management system. So these are anywhere from 2 to 7 codes, which depends on the association to association. What they do is they club together these codes and come up with 2 documents or 3 documents or 4 documents, and then they ask their member companies within the national associations to start implementing it. Now about the continual improvement cycle, what is it basically? Is the all ISO standards, all management system, performance management system standards these days are built upon a model which is called Plan, Do, Check, Act. So for instance, if I would like to improve in environment, health and safety or security, I need to first plan what I'm going to do. Then whatever I have planned, I need to implement it, which is the do part. And then whatever I have planned and implemented, I need to check whether I'm doing it right or wrong. And then based on the checking, I come up with the solutions to the problems or the gaps which we identify. This PDCA cycle is also called a natural cycle, because whatever we do off the job, we follow exactly the same pattern, but most of the time without knowing it. So your off the job activities, whether you are planning a trip, whether you are going to buy something, whether you are going to go to a grocery shop or a tourist resort. So we go through this plan, do, check, act exactly in the same manner without knowing it, okay, without putting it on the paper, or some of us people who are very, very disciplined, they put it on paper as well. So plan, do, check, act is the model which is used by all ISO and other standards built these days or implemented or practiced these days. So PDCA, Plan, Do, Check, Act, has a lot of elements which are which support these one. So context of the organization, leadership, planning, support, operations, performance evaluation, improvement, all these are part of that one. So if we take any performance management system these days, whether it's ISO 17025, which is the lab accreditation system, we will talk about that one a little in more detail in terms of that one. So ICCA came up with the Responsible Care Global Charter, which is around these 6 elements. And these 6 elements, they are basically taking care of all the plan, do, checked element under the responsible care. So ICCA has not come up with any standard like ISO standard for responsible care, but the chemistry councils, like in USA, American Chemistry Council, they have come up with 2 standards. One is for their members and one is open. I mean, anyone can apply it, which is called RC 14000. We'll talk about that one. So RC4, now in our facilities, whatever type of facilities are there, and if we are very proactive in terms of environment, health, safety, and security, we will find ISO 14000, which is the environmental management system. So through this 14,000, we manage our environmental issues, whether these are related to air, water, land, or waste, or anything, we manage that one. Similarly, we have ISO 45000, so which is health and safety, through which we manage our health and safety issues, risk assessment, hazard identification and risk assessment, and what needs to be done in terms of exposure and all that one. So this basically is taken. Now the security management system. Now every facility, like wherever we are working, in Turkey also, so we have security system in place, because no one can come into our facility without being checked, but the management element is missing. So that management element is basically a plan, do, check, act management system, what we are talking. So security management system, we need to develop based on our existing security system. So all these together, plus the inclusion of the value chain elements like the supply chain, environmental issues, community, people, employees. So we are not talking about employees only, we are talking about people, because people include employees as well as the communities around us. Then product stewardship, community, emergency response, all these type, when we add it, it becomes a responsible care initiative, which responsible care management system. And since now the American Chemistry Council has developed this standard, most of the companies, they only have this standard to prove that they have implemented it very well. So responsible care RC 14000 is basically built upon ISO 14000 standard. So what they have done is they have taken the latest ISO 14000 standard, which is the environmental management system, and added health, safety, and security, and expanded it beyond the fence line. So that's how it becomes the responsible care. Now coming back to the ISO 17025, which are normally the certification for lab accreditation and documentation requirement. This particular standard only revolves around the documentation and you can say the competence and calibration system of the laboratories. So it may be having plan, do, check, act element, the system element, but only for the competence and calibration systems which we have. So it talks about the structure, what type of structure should be there in order to address these requirements for competence and testing, and then the process and the management. At the end of this standard, there are basically 2 options. Option A deals with how you will implement this management system on your management system documentation related with 17025. And then option B says that if the organization is having 9,000 quality management system, how to integrate these requirements into the quality management system. So that means if you have quality management system, you don't need to go for a standalone 17025. You incorporate all the requirements into your quality management system, and then if the certification is required, you don't need to go separately. Together for the 9,000 and 17025, it could be addressed one at the same time. So in the beginning, like for instance, if you go back when the quality management system came, it was mostly applied on labs. And after that, they realized that since it covers the whole business processes, it's a very powerful document. So they reached out to at the organizational level, they started implementing it. Now in lab and research, their business processes are focused around these one. I may be missing quite a few things over here, but just to make a point on that one, we have biological materials, radioactive, explosive, poison, and flammables. And so we focus on these type of business processes within the labs, and these could easily be integrated into our overall management system. Now, the current practices in universities and typical lab or research centers, like on the left side, we have a security manual, which is a very typical security manual, which talks about like say universities or lab or research center. It has a dress code, hours of operations, security officers, campus security procedures, evacuation procedures, fire procedures, weather emergency, campus log. But that management system, what we talked about in the way, that part is missing. And then the security risk assessment, which is very essential part of any business activity, what we do, how to secure the facility, that one is missing. Similarly, human reliability program is also missing. Like for instance, if those high risk chemicals or products or biological elements are there within a lab, who needs to access that one, who has access to them, and whether these people are properly cleared for accessing these type of things, because it has the product itself or the viruses, they have their own issues which needs to be closely monitored in terms of the personal reliability program. So the another on the right side, we will find another typical lab or research center safety manual, which talks about all these things, which are the hazard information, awareness, general safety, biological safety, waste management. But you'll see that the hazard identification and risk assessment process, which is the foundation of the health and safety management system, is missing from here. So what basically the concept was, we need to have this in mind, that no matter how good our safety manual for the lab or research center for the university is, or the security manual, it's until and unless it is applied with management system approach and proper standards are used, it may not be as good as we think it is. International standards which are available right now, there are plenty. So two different security frameworks are available, and these are mostly either developed by the countries at the national level, or the agencies and all that one. They have developed it, and they have basically they are now expert in what they do. So IT related are many, because IT was an issue. And then industry specific, we talks about the financial industry and all that one. Also, one of the famous institute, I'll not say society, which is very famous globally, is called the ACES, American Society of Industrial Security. And they basically have lots of standards which they have developed. Very, very specific are the physical asset protection, supply chain risk management, workplace violence, security awareness. They also have a standard on risk assessment, investigations, and what are the roles and responsibilities of the chief security officer, and how this all the their model should be there in terms of security and all that. So they have these standards, but like I explained, these fall under the security management system. So under the security management system, we do a lot of things which are one of the most important. The foundation of the security management system is the security risk assessment or security vulnerability assessment. And once we do it, we find out our vulnerabilities, weaknesses in security, and then these standards, they help closing those gaps. Like for example, if we have something on the like for an organization, if we find a gap on the security organization that it's missing or basic part is missing, so we can then make use of these standards to close those gaps. So then there is National Counterintelligence Security Center also. They have a lot of standards on cyber security, up to personal security. They have all type of standards which could be used once we have the security management system. Homeland Security, they also have standards on critical infrastructure security, but most of these standards addresses very elemental requirements like disasters, economic security, emergency communications. They do have framework elements also, like the management system elements, but very, very specific to the topic which they are discussing it. Cyber Security and Infrastructure Security Agency, they have 3 standards on security design criteria. Like I said, again, when we find out that our lab is having some, or university where the lab is existing, we have some security gaps. We need then to address those gaps in terms of by the help of these standards. So these standards are freely available, by the way, and it can be applied except for the ACES standards where some sort of subscription is required. So a lot of best practices are also there. So for federal facilities, for buildings, for physical security performance, design basis threat, all these type of best practices are available which could be implemented. So I agree. In the beginning, it looks very overwhelming because it's just 30 minutes and bringing in so many standards and all that one, it becomes a little scary in the beginning, but it is not, frankly speaking. So we implement our management system, which is the health, safety and security and environmental management system. And under that one, once we implement that one, develop it, implement it. So whatever gaps we find out in each of the respective health and safety or environmental or security, we gradually start implementing it, because we may not be having that much budget available with us, that whatever gap we identify in all these 4 elements, we do it within 6 months. No, it needs to be done with a proper plan in place so that we do. So RC 14000 is a standard which talks about all these 4 elements which we are talking: health and safety, environment, and security. It's the only standard, management system standard, performance management system standard, which is in the integrated format for all these 4. We will not find any other standard globally which is integrated in terms of what we are looking, EHSS. So this is the only standard, and the beauty of this standard is that once we develop and implement it, we can achieve, if the organization is desiring to achieve certification, we can go for certification under this one management at one go. So we will get the not only RC 14000, but we will get the certification for ISO 14000 and ISO 45000 as well. So since security management system, we do not have any standalone standard like this one RC 14000. So under RC 14000, it is normally accreditation is available through American National Accreditation Board. So most of the ICCA members, their associations, they are recommending RC 14000 to be developed and implemented, because this is the only way of knowing that their member companies are actually implementing responsible care. So 3 types of assessments, like I think I have discussed it. So for the security, under responsible care program, we do the security risk assessment, which is also called security vulnerability assessment, SVA. Then the hazard identification and risk assessment, which we called it HIARA sometimes, and environmental risk assessment, which we call aspect and impact analysis. So how the organization is impacting the environment, and then how health and safety basically risks are there for the organization, and then the security, what are the security gaps. Security vulnerability assessment is a very structured process. So this on the right image on the right side of the slide, this is what normally is applied everywhere. So although it's an API, American Petroleum Institute on Security Vulnerability, but API doesn't mean it's only for petroleum and chemical industry, it's for everyone. So this model is being applied even in the standards also, in the ACES and other standards which have been developed for security risk assessment. So the first of all, the assets are characterized, they are prioritized, then threat assessment is carried out, and then based on the threat assessment, vulnerability analysis is carried out. Vulnerability means gap. And then risk assessment, how vulnerable are we? Then the risk assessment is carried out, and then countermeasures are there. So these basically what I was talking about, the performance management system, any vulnerabilities and the countermeasures, these are part of our performance management system under responsible care. Like for instance, we need to develop countermeasure analysis. When we do the analysis, we need to develop the goals and objectives. How we do it, we assign budget, we assign SMART targets, and then we prepare a plan. Maybe that's 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, up to 5 years, even for those security gaps which we identified, which requires too much of a budgetary requirement. So we plan ourselves in accordance with our limitations. So each year we do some actions and then we close it. And on the left side, you'll see that this is what comes out of the security risk assessment. So based on which the then security targets are developed as part of the overall HSSC performance management system. So security plan is developed, which comes out from the performance management system, and it deals with the assessment and all that one, plan and security training and security. We can keep it confidential because we would not like people to know what our security vulnerabilities are, but at the same time, we need to develop it so that we follow it, and then at certain point in time, once a year, the top management or the top organizational group, they go through it and then they come up with the requirements or the actions which need. So we talked about this one, I think, during our presentation. So it's a detailed map. This is basically a detailed map which addresses all these requirements, the 4 bullet points. But the security risk assessment must be carried out, or SVA must be carried out by some security expert, but his team should include all people having expertise in their respective areas, so that they are able to tell, like for instance, if within a lab, I am a in charge of the biology section, biological. So one of my experts should be part of the team, because only I will be able to tell them that it's a very high risk area, and people should not be coming here frequently or do not have access to this one, because the security guy expert, he would not be knowing it. So each of the experts should be there to guide that one. Thank you so much. I think I've tried to pull everything within this 30 minutes, but I think I overshot, I think, Trish, by I think 15, 20 minutes. Sorry for that.
No, thank you very much to hear. I know that some of you may be wondering why we're talking about responsible care, because you're academicians, but you also, some of you may also have your own private enterprises through the Technocant system. And also we notice that there are security vulnerabilities, but also the way that we practice is kind of what leads us and our next generation to industry. So having these practices and understanding these standards and being able to use some of the tools within the different programs can benefit our university laboratories wide. Arif, I'm going to turn it over to you because I know that there is much more for the rest of this morning. If there are any questions, I'm sure we can take them, but Arif, we defer to you for the schedule.
Günaydın herkese. Tahir hocamıza sorusu olan varsa chat kısmından yazarak sorularını sorabilir. Veya Patricia'ya sorunuz varsa da chat kısmından veya direkt sorabilirsiniz. Memnun oluruz. Ondan sonra da kaldığımız yerden devam edeceğiz inşallah.
May I ask you one question?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Now, in the world, we have a problem, infections, COVID-19.
Yeah.
Do we have any security management system in research laboratories about the infectious in research laboratories at such as university? Do we have any system in laboratories actually in for infectious actually between the researchers in the laboratories? Another question, second question is that some people say that such a viruses have been prepared in laboratory. Do you believe that this? You may not ask this second question if you want.
But, to answer your first question, there are various biorisk security programs in existence, and in Turkey there is a group led by 4 university laboratories in particular, a standard that is being reviewed by YOK, that has been drafted with Dr. Ayşen Keleş and Marmara University, along with a number of other university laboratories and some of the national labs, to prevent what we call laboratory-acquired infections. It is a practice, and so these systems do exist and the materials exist. At the moment, this a Turkish standard, applicable standard, is in development and being reviewed. And I'm more than happy to put you into contact with Dr. Keleş. As for your second question, when it comes, of course, we are always concerned when various infections or viruses can be made in the lab and have accidental release or intentional release. With respect to the COVID-19 virus, SARS-CoV, that has not been legally determined. There are lots of theories as to where the virus came from and originated. However, it is most likely that it is from the environment or some other sort of mutation. And currently, the WHO is now going to China to further investigate specifically the COVID-19 origin. So, you know, it can happen, but, you know, for what is currently happening, that has not been determined. And I will leave it at that.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So just to again emphasize, I mean, when we have this responsible care program, all these type of assessments and risk assessments, they are part of the health and safety. So in the lab, when we it's a part of the overall our responsible care management system, the lab expert, based on the respective assessments,
Rica etsem seslerimizi kapatabilir miyiz? Yankı yapıyor. Özellikle aynı odada iki laboratuvar.
Aysun Hocam'ın sesi açık. Aysun Hocam sesinizi kapatır mısınız? Aysun Hoca'nın sesi. Ben kapattım. Aysun Hocam. Emir Baki Hocam lütfen. Emir Baki Hocam lütfen. Evet. Şimdi oldu. Düzeldi. Evet. Buyurun. Mr. Tahir, please.
Yes. So I just would like to re-emphasize the point that it's good to have specific, because it will address all the very specific elements within a lab or a research center. And it's always good to apply standards. And the overall, like what responsible care does is that since we have the environment, health, safety, and security together, so they tend to bring these elements which are very specific. Like for instance, in universities, we have labs, we have research centers, and all must be having some sort of chemicals and other type of things which are there. So these management systems, they bring together a sort of framework where all these are addressed, and whatever is required for in order to implement some gaps within that one, it takes these gaps up to the top management. And that's how basically the people at the top who are managing the organization, they know what sort of actions they need to take in terms of budget, in terms of all that one. Similarly, since it's a management system, it is subject to the audit, internal audits also. So the internal auditor, he may not be from the lab, he may be from some other department and trained. So when he comes to lab, he audits them very well and come up with, maybe if there are gaps, he comes up with, all the time the auditors are finding gaps. And this is how basically we continually improve ourselves. So the concept previously of a gap, like finding fault with people, no, it's not. It has entirely changed under responsible care. Responsible care is such a good program that the people who are being audited, they are asking the auditors to tell them where the gaps are. And they are very, they are ready to give them the information which the auditor needs in order to improve the system overall, because it's going to benefit that organization.